So this is the second session on youth exchange team training.
So we're going to talk about recruitment. We can't have a program without a student. So we have to recruit our outbound students. And this has been, for our club, increasingly difficult. It's harder to find students. And I think other clubs have experienced this as well. So we've got together and we've got a few tips for you and some ideas, and we'll go along with these. Where do you find your candidates? Of course, at the high school, great place to start. If your school has French classes or German classes, any kind of foreign language class, you can get in contact with that teacher. Interact, as Kim Hancock said earlier, is a great resource because those kids are they already know a bit about Rotary. They're already the go-getters. Make a presentation, hit that club, go visit with them. Your churches, your faith-based groups, another great option. Contact the pastors, let them know, get some posters there. Sometimes we forget about our Rotarians, the family members. You know, they've got different members in their family that might be interested. Rebound students. Now that's the ones you really want to contact because those kids are Rotarized. They've gone in exchange, they've drank the Kool-Aid, they've come back, they are raring to go. And they have younger siblings or younger friends, and they're a great resource. Past host families, they also know the value of our program. They know how amazing it is, and they can suggest kids to you. Don't forget about your scouts, your boys and girls, your brownies, your guides, those kind of groups. And a group that is often overlooked is the homeschool groups, and those are getting bigger and bigger. And that's a great contact. Usually your high school will know who those people are and contact those groups and see if they're interested. It's great as a committee and a team to get a standard pitch going, a show that you take on the road and you go to all these groups. And again, get your Rebound students to come with you. Get them to put their blazer on and hit the road with you and talk about these things. Nina, yes?
Let me interrupt for 1 second. If your club is new to youth exchange, so you don't have any Rebound students, we have dozens of Rebound students who are available in the district that would be very, very happy to come and participate when you make a presentation at the school.
And they can be recent rebounds or past rebounds, like longer rebounds. Nanaimo has done a very good job the past few years of recruitment, and the 5 clubs work together, and we actually have on our website under program links and forms, we have an outbound recruiting assistance section. And in that, Jason Bradley has put the posters, which are on the website, the long-term exchange poster and the short-term exchange posters and flyers that are there, plus a slideshow that you can use. And it's all there, and anyone can use it and download it and take it and steal it and go with it. You also need to think about who you're looking for and the qualities of a good Rotary Youth Exchange ambassador. A good student kind of makes sense. Willingness to adapt to new situations, definitely have to be flexible. Like they show initiatives. Those are the kids that are, in those groups. They're in scouts. They're in Interact. Look at those kids. Are they willing to speak to groups? This one, they definitely learn when they're on exchange. They learn to speak, and that one, that does come. An attitude for giving. Do they exemplify our motto, service above self? There's quite a list here of other qualities to look for. Just, kind of nice to look at these kids, and are they tenacious? Are they observant? Do they know what an ambassador is? Do they know that they're going to be an ambassador to not only their club, their city, but their country? And are they up for that? So that's, I think there's even a bigger list on the website of different attributes and what we're looking for.
Jane brought up a point just a minute ago on making presentations. You talk about presenting to high schools. She had a Rebound student who did a presentation at middle school as a senior project. And so they got credit for doing that, but also it exposed the middle schoolers to the idea of going out on youth exchange, which is a fabulous idea.
It is, because it's good to be, think about this early in their school careers and they can prepare for it. If you have a student that is interested, you can send them back to back to the website, and they can fill out an application. So they just go to the website and click on long-term or short-term application, and that starts the process. When that happens, these links go to their website, our website, and then they get sent the information back. And it also alerts us that are looking in the YEA, the Youth Exchange Administrative Hub, that people are interested. It's really important that you let the applicants know to mention the club. If it's Port Townsend, put the Port Townsend Club in there. Otherwise, Port Townsend won't know that they've got someone interested. We do, as a committee, keep an eye on that. And I think this year we did have one floated through with no Rotary. They didn't have an affiliation with the Rotary Club. They just knew about Rotary Youth Exchange. They clicked on the application and away they went. So we were able to match, I think that was Courtney, that we were able to match up the student with the club. And the club was thrilled. Like, the student came to them. They didn't even have to recruit.
So another question was posed.
Yes.
And the question was, has the application process changed has the process changed for local interviews? And the answer is yes, it's changed somewhat. It was the same last year, but it'll be the same this year. The student goes online, fills out the first half of the application, which is the basic information, their schooling information, family information, student letter, parent letter, and photos. That is the portion of the application that you review at the club level. So they will have completed all of their basic information, their letter, their parents' letter, and have the photos ready. That's what they should be bringing to the club level interviews, along with the one form, the medical questionnaire.
The important piece too is watching that age. I talked about that earlier. Informational meetings. This is something, again, in Nanaimo that they've been very successful with. They have meetings in the spring and the fall, and they just talk about the program. They bring Rebound students. They have lots of Rotarians there, and they just let parents and prospective applicants hear about the program, and they have lots of questions, and it has garnered quite a few interested applicants for that area. The interview process, when you get to the point where you've got a few students ready to roll, the club needs to do the interview. And we have to stress that even if for some reason you have only one student, you've got one student, and you know that child is amazing, he has all those attributes, and he is going to be an amazing Rotary Exchange student, you still need to conduct the interview. If you don't, and you send that student to the district level without that interview, you're really doing a disservice. They haven't had that experience. And you just never know. When you're doing an interview, things might come up that you didn't know about this student. Allow 30 to 45 minutes per student. Discussion topics should include the program, like why we're having exchange, what the expectations are, why, ask the student, why are you doing this? Why do you want to be a Rotary Youth Exchange student? Are they comfortable being away from their home? Do they understand the program rules? Do they know they're going to be signing a drink alcohol? I will not drive a car. Are they aware of the world around them? Do they know about other countries? Are there parental custodian issues that they should know about? Social media use. Do they have appropriate social media use? Can they detach from their home? Their parents, are they going to be okay? What are the parents' expectations? Are they expecting Johnny to text daily? Will they be able to let go? You need to interview the student and their parents separately, and then bring them together at the end. The purpose of our club level is to make sure the student is committed and would make a great Rotary ambassador. I love this line, and I didn't write it, but it's true. Like, don't recommend a student for district if you would be happy to have that student in your own home. If you don't think that kid would be fun to have at your house, well, if your club participates in STEP, talk about this as well. It's also a great you know, I think I mentioned it earlier, if there's a student that you think, I don't know if he could be away for a year, but 4 weeks in the summer would be a great program. And we do have some kids that do step, and then, you know, if they're the right age, they go ahead the next year and do the long term. You probably were thinking about, sure, it's easy to recruit students, but how do we get those host families? Everyone says they can't get host families. Well, the past 2 years, we have done this new little trick, and we require our students to give us the name of 3 families who are willing to host an inbound student while they're on exchange. Last year, we said it was mandatory, but it wasn't it was mandatory, and this year we are firm about it. If you cannot give us 3 families who are willing to host, we're not going to send you. We need you to do some work as a student. And we're not saying that we won't help the student, but we need the student to talk to their families, maybe even come to your Rotary Club and convince some of those members of your own club that they should host. And this way, we've got 3 families all set and ready to go before we even start. And it really, really helped us last year.
One comment on that one is,
Yes.
as part of the process that you go through at the club level, contact those 3 host families and see if they truly are interested in hosting.
Good point.
I had a situation a few years back where someone wrote down the names, but the people were not actually interested in hosting. So that didn't bode well for this individual at the end of the interviews.
That's good. But it really did help last year. It was very beneficial. And it's good for the kids. It's good for them to work a little bit for it. You need your club level interviews to take place no later than September 30th, because once you identify a student as a candidate, there's a lot of work to do in completing the long-term exchange application form. They need dental appointments, they need medical appointments, and it takes a while. There are required and optional interview questions, and those are in the Youth Exchange Officer Manual. And they're the required questions. You need to ask those questions. It really it helps put all the kids at a level playing field. A good practice is to have Rotarians at the informational session, as I think I said that earlier, because they can watch the students and the parents, and you know, the interactions between them. You know, you can sort of see, is the student the one that's driving the bus and really wants to go exchange, or is mom pushing, and how they are with their parents. The club YEO needs to do with the YEA program. And Mike, do you want to talk to that quickly, or should I just skip over it?
So an outbound applicant, I'll bring up an outbound application here. So this is a student that has provided their application. He's a little furry at this point, but he does wear a cute hat. So processing side, this is where you evaluate the documents that the students submit. So the outbound medical questionnaire, I mentioned that's the only form that they need to submit prior to doing the club level interviews. After that, they need to provide you the host family referrals. We talked about that. We need a birth certificate and or a passport, the signed rules and conditions of exchange, the outbound medical report, the outbound dental report. Outbound guarantee form endorsements is the endorsement by your club that the student is going to go on exchange. Copy of the school transcripts. If the student's parents are divorced, then we need a copy of the custody document. So if not, then that's not a required document. But when the documents are submitted, you'll see that there's a received date listed in there. You double click on the line item and it will bring up the specific document, and you click on the evaluate button, which brings up the document to evaluate. So this individual, John here, says he's a male, and we've got a birth date in there for him. Birth date was 2004. And it's October 3rd, 2004. So he's more than 16, so that's a good thing. doesn't list any medical issues on this page, which is really good. He has a violent allergy to penicillin. So that's, if you find anything in here that is of a medical concern, make sure that you forward the medical questionnaire to our medical advisor. That's Maureen Considine out of the Olympia Club. She is an appropriate person to review and see if we will have any issues sending this person on exchange. Just because they list something here doesn't mean we're not going to send them on exchange. We just need to learn more about it and make sure that there's nothing that's going to be a showstopper for us. Down here at the bottom, has the applicant been vaccinated against routine childhood illnesses? If they haven't checked that box, they're not going on exchange. There are no exceptions. Students have to be vaccinated against all appropriate childhood illnesses, or we won't send them on exchange. So in this case, because John did not check that box, well, maybe he just missed it. So we'll reject it and send it back to him. So when we go back here, we can say that it's rejected. When we flag it as rejected, John will receive an email saying, hey, your application for your medical questionnaire was denied, and here's what's wrong with it, because we can tell them what's wrong. Oh, you didn't check the immunization box, or you left this blank, or you left that blank. So the student will receive information back to let them know what needs to be done.
So basically, that's what we're saying. We just want people to, the YEO, to look over this and make sure there's nothing, and then get it and deal with the problems.
Correct.
And don't let that scare you, because YEA is big and complicated, but it's amazing. Once you can use it, everything's there, and it becomes very straightforward. So after you've done your interviews, your club interviews, you want to select your primary and alternate outbound candidates, and make sure you know that the number of primary candidates commits you to your club to host inbound. So if you're sending 4 primary candidates, you're hosting 4 inbound students. And you can only have, your club may not submit more alternates than number of primary. So if you have 1 primary, it's 1 alternate. Pretty straightforward. Those long-term application forms need to be completed in the YEA by October 31st. And then what happens is your club coordinator goes through and prints the applicants. So we need to have a little bit of time for them to get all that done, because it's quite a process. I did it for the first time this year. The club coordinator makes 3 copies of the application for the outbound interviews, but your student must bring those 3 originals of the guarantee form and the rules and conditions of exchange to district outbound interviews, and it has to be in blue ink. I don't know why it has to be in blue ink. Mike probably does. We probably don't need to go there, but it has to be in blue ink.
Yeah, the reason is it has to be in blue ink is that there are embassies and that will not accept black ink signatures still, even though you can photocopy the blue ink in a color photocopier and it looks like it's ink. That works for them for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah. But that always is so. As youth exchange officer, when we used to, when I always bring a blue pen with me and make sure there's a blue pen, and talk about the blue pen a lot. Our district interviews, I mean, this screen is all talking before COVID, but they'll be held in Victoria on the first weekend in December. And once the students have been selected in place, they begin preparing for the next phase, which will be the outbound orientation, which is usually the 3rd weekend in March. And of course, again, we'd love to have the club YEOs and outbound counselors go to the outbound orientation. And we also rely on those same people and members of the Rotary clubs to come to our district interviews and of course our rebounds. So that's student recruitment. I'll stop sharing my screen and maybe we'll have a quick talk before we go on to the budget. If we'd like to do that. Does
So
anyone
if you
have
have
any
a question, please raise
questions
your
about
hand.
recruitment, about host parent recruitment, about student recruitment?
I did make a comment in the chat, but I think it got stuck into the other one. But
I saw it.
one thing that our club's done for the last couple of years is we have had a table set up at the back to school day with information about exchange, and we share it with the Interact. So we have information about the Interact Club and Youth Exchange, and we hit every student coming in to get all their course schedules, and
That's
we
great.
get we hand out a lot of paperwork
Of the flyers, and those flyers are available on the website.
We do something similar in Paulsbo, North Kitsap, and that also has gotten us a lot of host families because we talk about hosting as well as both the long-term and short-term applications. And quite often families will be interested in hosting and they just hadn't thought about it before.
Are we good? Should we carry on?
Well, a couple of more things.
Oh.
Michelle had mentioned that if you have more than one great applicant, your club can sponsor 2 or 3 even students if your schools will accept the inbounds. If you're going to send more than one, obviously you need to talk to your school beforehand to make sure that they're willing to accept more than one. And remember that that also obligates your club to the additional inbound activity fee. So you might have only paid for 1 inbound activity fee. You go to the interviews, you've got another great student, realize that that's obligating you to set up a separate or pay a separate inbound activity fee for that second student.
Exactly. I think Rosemary had her hand up. Did you see that?
Last year, we had our students, our outbound student, give us the name of 3 families that would entertain the idea of hosting a family. And I think it's really hard for families to know all about it, for that particular student's family to know all about it. So that when they gave us those names, then I called them and spoke with them about it and explored it with them and answered all their questions.
Exactly.
And not that they had to commit, that these aren't families that are going to be host families.
For sure.
But they're willing to entertain the idea and talk with us about it. And that worked out really well because even if they said, oh no, I can't do it this year. Oh, I know she gave my name, but this happened. Well, then can you tell me someone else?
Exactly.
So it wasn't a dead end, but they didn't, it's hard to say, oh yes, I will host when they haven't spoken with a Rotarian to know all the ins and outs.
Yep.
So
Excellent point.
We need
Thank
to
you.
say, are you willing to entertain the idea of it? And it's easier for us to get the names then.
Very good. So I'm going to ask a question. I want you to actually raise your hand this time rather than virtually raise your hand. The question is, how do we need 3 host families in order to have an inbound student? Do we actually need 3 host families?
Trick question.
Is there yes? Eric says yes. If you think yes, raise your hand.
2.
Oh, okay. I guess
got 2, 3, 4 people saying yes. I got Jane down there shaking her head. No. So this is a new change from Rotary International this year. We are required to have 1 host family, and you're required to have a backup family available. So that's 2. That's all that's really required from this year forward. They recommend still that we have 3 host families because it's a better experience for the student, but they've backed off completely on the requirement for 3 host families.
Wow.
So that's a fairly significant change.
That's great.
So we're still asking the students to provide the names of 3 potential host families. And as Rosemary eloquently said, that gives you, as the club youth exchange officer or committee member, people that you can talk to about the youth exchange experience, what it's going to be like to be a host family, find out if there is true interest, if there is. So anyway, wanted to make sure that was very clear to everybody going forward.
So the budget. How much is this going to cost your club? Your inbound activity fee in the US is $1,500, and I like to laugh right now and Canadian, that's $1 million. Hopefully our dollar perks up a little bit, 2,100. Your outbound fee, as I said, per student that you're interviewing is 150 US, 210 Canadian. Your monthly student stipend, it varies, depends on the club. It's around 100 US, 140 Canadian. My club, for example, we pay $110 and we pay for her cell phone, which I think we have her on a $35 plan. In Canada, we give our host families an honorarium or a stipend. My club, we pay $400, but it varies from 200 to 400. And so in total, it is a little more in Canada because we're paying for the host families. It's $7,210. In my club, our budget is about $9,000 because we like to, you know, if she's a skier, we try and give her a ski pass. We paid for swimming lessons this year. We're lucky we're able to do that. That's not necessary.
A lot of clubs do provide a cell phone. We actually keep the cell phone plan year over year and just turn it off, inactivate it for the months, the 2 months the student's not there, and then pass it on to the next student. But we've got 2 phones set up that way.
That's
So that
great.
obviously adds a little bit, but a little bit more peace of mind for you as a YEO or a counselor and for the host families if you know that the students have a cell phone with them. Charlie?
So just as some information, and I don't know if they're available in Canada. I know Consumer Cellular promotes their service for seniors, but they are actually on the AT&T network. And last year we signed our student up for a cell phone through them. They brought their own phone. We just put their SIM card in it, and it's really, really cheap.
That's what we do. We change SIM cards in Canada. What my club does anyway.
Mm-hmm. Excellent ideas. Dennis?
What we do is we buy one of those phones you can put the minutes on. So you add the minutes as they needed, and that's reviewed monthly by the club board.
Oh,
Perfect.
excellent idea.
What it's worth. Actually, we should have what it's worth to your clubs. Why you should, you know, be a YEO, why you should participate in Rotary Youth Exchange. There's a lot of payback. It makes the world a better place. For the kids, it's a year of a lifetime. And my student has struggled quite a bit this year with the COVID situation, of course, as they all have. And I just keep teasing her and laughing and say, imagine when you're a grandma and you can tell your kids where you were for the pandemic. You were in Canada. They won't believe you that you were in Canada and that you survived and you thrived even in a pandemic situation. The natural parents are so proud and happy to see, you know, how their children grow. Often these people become Rotarians. Or their parents become Rotarians that they weren't Rotarians before. Your sponsor district and your Rotary Club, it contributes to our Fifth Avenue of service. It's potential new Rotarians, potential new host families. And the host families, they have new sons and daughters. They are more familiar with the world. I have traveled around Europe and visited and stayed with some of the host family, some of the students that I have hosted over the years. We've had about 15 students. I'm still in contact with a lot of them. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, but it really is priceless to your club. Your club is known in another continent. You know, we talked earlier about those connections and building relationships with high schools. This is invaluable for that. Recruiting, you know, outbound parents and host parents as new members, priceless. It really is an investment in the future of your Rotary and your club. It makes the world a smaller, better place, and it exemplifies service above self. I think everyone here is passionate about it, and I really hope that, and I know that we will get through this COVID situation, and exchange will go on, and maybe it'll be better. Who knows?
So before we go on, there's a couple of more questions that came up.
Okay, sure.
one question was, is the host family stipend a requirement in Canada? And I don't know that it's a requirement, but I think all Canadian clubs do provide a stipend.
Well, we do a lot of, there's a lot of competition in Canada in my area. Again, speaking to our school district, we have a lot of international students and they get a lot of money to host. So we are competing against that. I think they get $800 to $900 a month to host. So sometimes it's hard for us to get youth host families because they think, well, they can get $800 if they host in the international program. So we've tried to make it a little more lucrative, and groceries are expensive.
So another question, this was from Jeannie, saying that her club pays all school fees and activity and sports fees, and for graduation and outbound trips to Victoria. Are you out of line in doing that? No, your club can absolutely choose to do that.
We do that too.
Yeah, we pay for a lot for our students. We have usually 2 outbound students, 2 inbound students. The inbound students, sometimes it's a little bit dependent on the student. If the student is really engaged and is trying to make the most out of their exchange, we tend to do more for them. We've had students that were just kind of biding their time on exchange, which is not a good situation for anybody. And we didn't do as much for those students. We've had students who have done odd jobs around for Rotarians in the clubs to raise money to go on the California trip, the end of year trip. We've had students that have cooked dinners to raise money for trips.
Yeah, no, they get what, they get what they put into it.
Joe commented that at Lakewood this year, or not this year, this month, we've had exchange students presenting as program speakers. So a student from Denmark and then from Italy. So the Italian was probably Chris Cartham. But talking about what it's like to be on an exchange experience. And that's another good way, to keep those students engaged with Rotary, but also for your club members to find out how valuable the program really is.
Absolutely. And we're still, the COVID situation, we're meeting by Zoom, and we're still having Carolina, our student, give her weekly report via Zoom. And that way our club is still remembering that even though they can't go see her physically, she's still in the country and they're still having contact with her.
Yeah. Cindy is saying that her club is bringing past inbound students to Zoom meetings to update members.
Nice.
And it's definitely still a connection. We had a student who from 10 years ago that was a part of our meeting this past week. So
that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Bruce is saying that his club does a Christmas cash donation as a Christmas gift to help the students with some of the trip costs.
Oh, I like that idea. That's so great about today, right? Getting these ideas. I love this picture. This speaks volumes. Look at all those passports. Look at all those faces all over the world. It gives me goosebumps. I know that's, maybe I'm a bit of a dweeb, but it does give me goosebumps. We're almost at the end here before I hand it over to Mike to talk about the elephant in the room, as we call it, the COVID situation. Just to recap, read your Youth Exchange Officer's Manual. Truly read it. I read it when it was 140 pages. You can handle the 40 pages or whatever. 70 pages? I forgot already. Anyways.
42.
Thank you. If you have a question, check the website. We've gone over that. It's there. The hyperlink's there. General questions regarding Youth Exchange Program is your country's club coordinator. In Canada, that's me. In the States, that's Mate right now. And that is going to be changing. If you have questions about your student, direct it to your country officer, the YEA administrator. Questions regarding host family vetting should go to your country's compliance officer, and that's all listed on our website. If there's an event that's not on the Youth Exchange calendar, call Jane. She'll deal with that, our new manager. Questions regarding process, communications, fees, and procedures will should be directed to our district youth exchange chair, which is Mike, and his email address is on the webpage. Anything regarding youth protection or training could be directed to your district youth protection officer.
So at this point, many of you know, maybe some of you don't know, we canceled the short-term exchange program, the STEP program, because there's absolutely no way that we're going to send kids out in July, August this year. The long-term program, we're going to make a go, no-go decision on long-term at the end of May. So the 31st of May, we're going to decide whether or not to move forward. There's a lot of things that go into that decision. One thing that we're looking at fairly extensively right now is the idea of doing a modified long-term exchange. Do a semester-based exchange rather than a year-long, than a full academic year exchange. And the logic behind that is that we've got school districts who have come back and said, hey, we're not going to be starting up in September. We're going to be starting up in January. Well, if the school district is going to start in January, it doesn't make sense to try to get students here earlier, and we may not be able to get students here earlier than that. Issues that we're having to deal with, we have some of our exchange partners who have said that they're not going to be doing exchanges for the 2021 year. We have others that said, yes, we're definitely going to be doing them, but we'll be doing semester-based exchanges rather than annual exchanges. Rosemary's got a question, so I'll answer her question and then we'll go from there.
Made his presentation of his year from Belgium on Zoom at our Rotary meeting last week. It was very touching. And I put my hand up when people were talking about how the students had spoken, but
Okay.
it was our first international presentation from Belgium to our club. It was great.
The other thing that we've shared with youth exchange officers and club presidents this past week is that if the program does move forward, we won't be having the inbound students arriving in late August. Once again, that's not doable. It's not a safe thing to do for anybody at this point, even if we could do it. So we're looking at January, doing a semester-based exchange. Rotary International is doing a risk assessment. The RI board is meeting the first week in June to make a decision on youth exchange program for the coming year. In Western States Student Exchange, it's a group that we're a member of in the Western United States. At this point, 6 districts have said they are not going to exchange. The other 12 districts are going to make a decision late May, early June. North American Youth Exchange, which is US, Canada, and Mexico. We've had several of the larger groups say that they are not going to be doing exchanges, but more than half are holding out to be able to do a semester-based exchange if that will work. On the short-term side, I said that we're not doing short-term exchange, but we're working on setting up a short-term virtual exchange right now, where our students will be connected with the students that they would have gone to live with for a month. And we're going to be doing Zoom meeting sessions between those students and their families, several of them planning on doing 10 sessions with those students and those families, so at least they can get a feel for what it would have been like and establish a relationship if they choose to go out on exchange next year. Okay, general questions. Anything having to do with youth exchange that we didn't cover that you still have questions? I got a question from Eric here.
So my question actually goes back to COVID-19, and this is just a hypothetical, but let's pretend that schools do, they reopen and they're going to hold classes, but what if they're doing socially distanced learning where you have students that have to be 6 feet apart from one another and you have a 6-student class? Do we have any idea if the district or RI is going to be talking about that as far as a student being placed in a school when socially distanced learning might be a very real thing in the fall and in the spring of next year?
excellent, excellent questions. And in fact, some of the school districts have already talked about that. We had one school district that came back and said, yes, we are going to accept students, exchange students this next year. They need to socially isolate for 2 weeks upon arrival in the US. Then they can start school. If they catch a common cold while they're in school, then we're going to ask them to leave, just like every other student in the school. Ask them to socially isolate for 3 weeks before they can come back to school. So it's going to be kind of different. But what we're hearing from those school districts who are going to do exchanges, they're not going to treat the exchange students any different than any other student here, which is what you would expect and what I would hope. Cindy posted a question here in the chat window saying problem she sees is recruiting for the 21-22 year. And that is going to be very, very interesting. Most of your school districts probably are not going to be starting up at the normal time that they would. They're going to be starting up much, much later, either late December or early January. What does that look like for us? Well, blessed are the flexible, for they don't get bent out of shape. We're going to need to modify our process. You saw our dates, October 31st for applications. Well, if we can get the word out, we can start processing some applications, but it's going to make it very difficult for other students who are not in school. How are they going to learn about our program? How are we going to be able to do some sort of an event to attract people? So we're going to need to think about that. And there are different ways. You can do Zoom meetings, but how do you get the word out to people to show up to the Zoom meetings? That's going to be an interesting one. And we've got a superintendent of schools and a couple of a vice principal as members of our club. So I'm working with the superintendent and the vice principal to come up with a way to provide an informational night, if you will, to the students who are in the language courses. And it'll be something very similar to what we're doing here, where we talk to them about what the program will look like. The application dates are definitely going to have to slip. The interviews that we normally do in December, we're obviously not going to be doing interviews in December in Victoria, because the students will not have had time to put their applications together, and many of them won't even be in school in December. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Well, thank you so much. I hope it was beneficial to you. I feel like I got more in the groove at the end. So I guess hopefully we'll be doing this again, do more Zoom training, and we'll just get better at it.